Welcome to Momentum Monday. Today is November 3rd, 2024, a couple days before the US presidential elections. Howard, did you vote?
I voted 10 times.
Which state? So was it a swing state?
I'm trying to get up to Alaska today to make a vote. Yeah, like any good American, you vote more than once. Isn't that the deal?
Sure.
Can you vote?
Not yet. I'm still with a green card. I haven't applied for citizenship yet, even though I can. But I will, I think, soon.
Look, my glasses broke. They fell in the toilet today. I had to go clean them for the first time in a while. The what was I going to tell you? The betting markets were fun. I made a trade on Kamala. You know, it's just like the betting markets just skewed. So last week was crazy. They were skewing so Trump. So it's just interesting how there's just misdirection everywhere. It might make elections more interesting as people get forced to vote, right? Um, and in the polls create all kinds of inefficiencies in betting. But the Robinhood launch was pretty cool. Like more as like just a barometer of what the degeneracy, that I talk about so often.
Yeah, they
There's
seem to be
no
so much
way.
better at marketing because Interactive had the same product, you know,
Well, I just think
2 months ago.
Interactive doesn't have consumers. Robinhood has consumer. Even if Interactive spent fortunes marketing it, no one's going to open an Interactive broker. They're gonna vote on stock twits and vote on Twitter because it's just a click of a button and everybody sees it. And Interactive brokers just focus on profits. So they have their own reasons for launching it, but they're not going to get the consumer reach, right? Because people just don't have accounts. But yeah, the hoods, I mean, since you have hood up, the sell-off is rather interesting, right? I think their comps are going to get very tough. I own the stock. The comps are going to get very tough, assuming rates keep getting cut, their margins, that was free money. And then, the volume comparisons through this. Uh, but again, I think they're out of jail, and it's a really good trend if we look back to the weekly.
Yeah. So do you think
But
it
I
is
think
it will become a commodity or it's still a growth company?
I think it's stocks and bonds, so I don't think it can be. It's always going to be a bit cyclical based on trading volumes and interest rates, but I think they have such a moat in terms of newcomers coming in. So they've kind of gotten through like Schwab did and TD and Interactive did in the last cycle. But I think the sell-off you could see in a lot of stocks like Uber, like a lot of the stocks that were breaking out and really had momentum have just kind of gone back into their bases. So while the market's strong, there were signs, I think, and you can go to this now. There are signs that like we're taking a breath.
Yeah, we talked about it last week that
Yeah.
we're seeing more distribution days, and we saw more of that last week, despite relatively good earnings from four of the big seven. So definitely distribution, which is normal ahead of considering that the S&P is up 20% year to date. It was up, what, 20% last year as well.
Yeah.
And we have, elections coming up, so why not, catch a little bit or take some profits just in case, because it might be a non-event, the elections, or they might lead to a 5% move up or down in a day. So it kind of makes sense to see that uptick in volatility lately, and it's also earnings season, and also we have an FOMC meeting next week where the Fed is expected to cut rates again. Like the question is it going to be 25 basis points or more? And I think currently the market is pricing in 25. And if it's more than that, we might see a huge reversal because ever since the last rate cut in September, rates have done nothing but go higher. Look at this huge move. This is the 10-year yield went from 3.6
Massive move.
to almost 4.4%. This is a huge move. I mean, treasuries are selling off. Basically, the market saying it doesn't really matter who the candidate who will win. The deficit is going to increase.
Yeah, the
Inflation is
market
down.
the market is voting on policy, and neither have shared much. Or, Kamala can be accused of flip-flopping. She hasn't clearly explained why she's changed her mind. And Trump doesn't talk about policy, and the policy he does talk about is not, good. What is his name? Musk said his policies could cause a short-term crash. He's spending hundreds of millions on that policy. So even Musk is saying Trump's policies could crash the market, and that can't be, so that's getting priced in the VIX. If you pull up the VIX is 23. When Clinton lost, the market imploded because the VIX wasn't pricing in a Trump win. Now the VIX is kind of pricing in that it just sucks either way and expect the market to react badly. So it could be a nothing burger either way, unless it's something we don't expect, which is a blowout for one or both of the, if I think the only shock would be if Trump or Kamala blow the other one out. I
Yeah.
mean, so I think otherwise the market's just unhappy. What the market's doing, the economy's happy, and the market seems just is finally starting to worry that the policies suck, right? Because interest rates are going up, gold going up, commodities other than oil going up. I mean, but a pullback here in gold. So, I just think risk coming off ahead of a great run. If you're an institution, you just can take some, the rest of the year off even. It's a hell of a year.
Yeah, definitely. So we were talking about earnings. I mean, Google crushed estimates, had a big gap, but it couldn't hold it. It closed the gap very quickly.
Yeah.
So if you're a trader, this might not be a bad spot. But obviously, in front of the elections, it might be too early. But Google continues to grow. We had an earnings surprise, continues to grow a pretty decent level, 50% sales growth, 28% earnings, which
Yeah.
is pretty significant for a company of this size. Amazon gapped up also after earnings near its all-time highs. 200 has been a huge level since it seems Jeff Bezos is selling a ton of stocks right near 200, so he's kind of keeping a lid on it. But they also continue to grow at an impressive rate. So I think the pullbacks in Amazon, the pullbacks in Google are probably good buying opportunities for swings. Bearing the market doesn't crash, in the
Yeah.
next couple months. Apple disappointed a little bit, gap down, pulled back. Buffett continues to sell his stake in Apple. They had a huge stake, and they continue to sell relentlessly this year, which is very uncommon for Berkshire since they tend to hold their best holdings for decades. And it seems with Apple, that's not the case. Like they're basically looking at it as a position trade, not as a long-term investment. And then you have Microsoft, they also gapped up. They're stuck in a range currently. But, depending on if you're bullish or bearish, you can make the arguments on both sides. But they seem stuck between, 385, 465. They're just in a huge sideways mess.
Yeah.
So these were the four big reports. But what stood out last week is we saw a lot of like alt leaders that were beaten down. All of a sudden, they popped up after earnings. Like Twilio, gapped
Yeah,
up.
Zoom, I think some old software stock, Zoom, I think broke out.
Zoom, Roblox, like
I'm
quite a
long Roblox. That could be, holds above this gap. I think it's
yeah, quite a few laggards. We also saw some crazy moves in some of the highly shorted insurance stocks. Look at this one, Roots. Huge gap up, like it went from 40 to 120 in one day. And at the beginning of the year, this was under a $10 stock. So
Wow.
this has been an amazing move. And then the other one that I actually played, Lemonade, also
Oh,
after earnings,
nice.
gap up and
What's
rally.
the long term look like? It's a mess, right?
Yeah, long term, it's a little bit of a mess, but it's been building a base here, like going sideways for the past
Oh,
2 years,
yeah.
and this is roots. I mean, this was like what a $3 stock.
Was it a SPAC? Was this a SPAC?
No, it's not a SPAC. As far as I know, it was not a SPAC. It just was
Like it might have been a SPAC
completely crushed.
based on the era, and then the reverse splits might have been a SPAC.
IPO'd in
Anyway,
2020. He went down what 95%.
yeah.
And it's very interesting. I mean, it's just an insurance company. They're not even profitable yet. Only 1 billion market cap. But when you have a very small float, here we have shares outstanding of 50 million, float probably 11 million. I don't know how many of them are even restricted. And then
I mean, listen,
highly
on
shorted.
you, right? Like there's just money in the market. Like I keep saying, the private markets are not as interesting as the public markets, right? Like the only thing interesting in the private markets is AI, and it's massively frothy and everybody chasing, right? Like,
Overvalued. Yeah.
I don't know about overvalued. It's just not as interesting as the Web 2 era. AI is big boy venture, right? It's infrastructure and tons of capital, which is, interesting, which is good. Like venture capital being allocated to, not to the 100th copycat app is a good thing. So there's a ton of money, and I keep saying this for months or maybe a couple of years now. There's too much attention on the private space. And I think guys like you who have a wider breadth of being able to understand the markets and money flow, it's a good time. Like you're finding these obscure industries that have reversed long-term downtrends because I think people realize that they're under allocated to the rest of the S&P or the Wilshire 2000. And you're kind of digging through that. I'll give you two examples, New York Times and Reddit, right? Like people keep talking about the election, but they haven't looked at like who's really benefiting, right? New York Times is, I'm not long to New York Times, but I'm fascinated by it because I hate it, right? Like fake news, even though it's, most of the news isn't fake that they report on, but too much is, and they're printing money, right? And selling, driving traffic with clicks around stuff that pisses off 50% of the population, and then hooking you with cooking and, Wordle and all these other, products that people love, right? And so they figured out an incredible engine. And then there's Reddit, right? No one was talking, everybody's talking about Twitter, and here you go,
Yeah, I'm
right? Like,
baffled by what Reddit has
again,
done. It's just unbelievable.
I'm
Yeah.
not baffled because it has a huge user base that, much like Twitter, is addicted to it, but like goes much deeper and has a better moderation, uh, you know, set of tools and people than Twitter, right? And it's this off the beaten path. Again, forgetting valuation for the moment because it ain't cheap. Um, but here is a company that keeps saying there's no IPOs, right? But if I look at Reddit, I look at Klaviyo, KVYO, which is email. If you look at like these kind of make sense, Ivan, and it's social's dead, right? And so if we look at Reddit, New York Times, Klaviyo, what's cool is profits. Reddit turned to profit is, turning a profit. Klaviyo also um, is I think profitable. Klaviyo,
It is, yeah.
KBYO, which is an email-based product, right? So again, not cheap because again, like the momentum is never cheap, but this is the leading email company in a world where social is broken and emails in. And, I see this with Beehive and StockTwits and a couple other email company focused products that we have. Email is how you talk to your customers, and Klaviyo is going to be an important company in the non social world. Um, and so if you are going to be a social company, you got to have profits like Meta and now Reddit. So Reddit's kind of figured it out. With hundreds of millions of daily actives, and on the New York Times front, if we pull up New York Times, why is it only 9 billion, right? Versus Reddit being 17 billion, even though
My
New
team,
York
yeah.
Times says good, good. And I think it comes down to the share structure. So I don't think anybody, because of the way the shares are structured, I don't think it's like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos can take control of it. So it's perennially undervalued, even though it's like really profitable, right? And I think so. That's an interesting one to me. I don't think it
Why
can,
don't you own it then?
because of just I don't know how it moves because it would be 18 billion tomorrow, Ivan, if that share structure didn't exist, because someone would come along for that influence and buy it, right? But I don't think you can have a hostile. So what I'm saying is, Ivan, if you look at the influence versus market cap, Elon Musk would be better off owning the New York Times at 9 billion than paying with profits and paying 44 billion for Twitter, which has no profits, right? So I do think there's something to the structure that prevents it. But man, look at that in 2008, $4. So New York Times, it ain't going away, put it that way. So it's just one to follow in terms of media. Trying to think if there's anything else. Biotech still kind of
There is
just
a lot really to cover. I mean,
go ahead.
like Carvana, for example, it's the best performer in space since 2023, like what up 2000%. It's a $47 billion company, which
I
is
think it was trading at like under a billion.
yeah. So this is a weekly. So yeah, it went from 350 down to 3
Yeah,
and
it's
9%, and now it's back to 230. Another crazy move post-COVID.
same with the firm and Upstart, all these financial companies have reversed.
Yeah,
Because
Upstart.
Carvana is kind of a financial company.
Yeah. So definitely Upstart, a firm. So quite a few of them. And on Friday, the other interesting news was Nvidia is replacing Intel in the
Yeah.
Dow. So maybe this will be finally a chance for Intel to bottom. At least
Yes.
this is what happened with
I
Exxon.
don't know which will happen more likely, NVIDIA tops or Intel bottoms, but it could be a combo of the both. But it seems very momentum-ish. But that's how market cap weighted indexes work. They're momentum indexes.
Yeah,
Uh, Although Dow is not market cap weighted, so that's more
I think it's
interesting.
price weighted, but it's based on price, on the
Yeah.
price of the stock.
So
I just
so
covered for
so
video.
maybe less momentum oriented and more stock picking oriented. I'm not sure,
No, it's
but
based on its price. If you have a higher price, you have a bigger. It's very weird
yeah,
structure.
very weird because Intel should have
Uh,
been long gone based on its price. Um, so I don't know for sure the picking, but I mean, very momentum-ish. But again, yeah, so that's interesting. What else do you got?
I mean, that's it basically. These are the main. Obviously, the big SMCI, their accounting company resigned, so they
Yeah,
got down and selling off. It seems like another Enron in the making. And since they've been a big customer for NVIDIA, there might be some troubles at some point. Not now, but at some point. And Dell seems to be the big winner out of all of this, since they're competitor of SMCI and they sell AI servers. And the
hmm.
rumor is that nobody wants to deal with SMCI right now, and they're going back to Dell. And this is why we
Yeah,
saw this uptick in relative strength in Dell in the past few days. So this is
yeah.
one to watch to be a potential beneficiary out of all of this.
Well, well, I think as AI proliferates, as Robinhood proliferates, as Interactive Broker I opened an Interactive Brokers account this week. So it's like as Interactive Brokers kind of becomes more individualized, and AI proliferates research like FinChat that we're investors in, CoiFin, um, and people, you know, that is that group that started COVID that survives gets smarter and stays in the market. I just think there's a real big opportunity for stocks that aren't in FANG as money flows around to, guys like you who have a bit of an edge, because you've traded for a couple decades and know how to look beyond, one or two screens. So I'm very bullish on just money rotating and there being some new trends. Obviously, you got the election, you've got new president potential. Well, you got a new president either way, it's Kamala or Trump. And then you have, just these kind of new battlegrounds in terms of Taiwan and Ukraine and Middle East. And then you have this commodity boom kind of starting. Um, so it should just be an interesting year. My biggest thought, though, Ivan, is that a lot of people will just take their money this year and go, I've had a good year, and it could be very choppy for the next month. Um, so we'll see. Put to call ratio has been super high for like a week or two. So not just the VIX, there's just a lot of hedging and a lot of volatility to unwind. So I'm kind of laying low for the week, but as you see, some of those breakouts were pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm the same way. Probably this week I'll be mostly watching at least until after the elections, and then we see.
All right, buddy.
All right, Howard, thank you.
Have a good week, everybody.